So hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Profit Project interview series, where today we're going to be talking about all things generating growth. And I'm excited to have on the line here somebody who's an expert in the space of having a mindset for growth. And that is the awesome Ian Kaminskyj from Melbourne NLP Hypnosis Centre. Welcome to the call today, Ian.
Thank you so much, Craig. Thanks for having me today. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, cool. And so we're going to delve into, all things that, I love to talk about mindset that has such a big impact, I know, on things that I work with clients and the like as well. But, I'm always interested in the backstory of people as well as to how you came to do what you do and, and ultimately end up starting a business around this idea of mindset growth and NLP, hypnosis and all those types of things.
I have actually quite an unusual background, actually, Craig. I actually have a doctorate in engineering, of all things. And what actually happened there, as I was sort of working my way through and lecturing at Monash University here in Victoria, I developed a real passion for success, performance. What helped some people actually overcome challenges, obstacles, actually for others it sort of really held them back. And so what I found was that when I got to the end of my PhD, and we had some major political issues in the faculty and problems with lots of things, I thought, well, look, it's time mostly to move on. I'd sort of been there for over 15 years. It was getting a little bit stale in some respects. I thought, well, if I want to escape academia, which is pretty tricky to do sometimes, if you've been there for a long time, I thought now's my opportunity. And I thought, well, what am I really passionate about? And it's all about success, mindset, what helps people overcome their obstacles and succeed. So I thought, look, now's a great time to sort of explore this passion of mine. This is going back in around now 2008, and I've been in this sort of field now ever since, and absolutely loving it.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, I think you touched on something there that, happens in many people's journeys. We've been through a time where there's a whole lot of change, sometimes a whole lot of uncertainty. And, you've experienced that there yourself as far as what you've just taken. There's always that going on in the myriad of different circumstances, whether it's the global issues that we've seen recently and the like, but also very much at a localized personal level. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are going to relate with that kind of idea and concept. So I'm curious, as you made that change from academia and into, I guess, the business world and the like, what sort of challenges did you find yourself as you sort of went into that startup phase of learning and growing a business?
Great question, Craig. I think running a business actually and sort of knowing, how to do that properly. I'd learned NLP techniques. I learned a bit about hypnosis. So I knew that side of things quite well. But when it came to things like selling, marketing, admin, accounting, bookkeeping, all that other stuff, you generally don't hear much about that. And so that was probably the main challenge initially, Craig, just sort of getting my head around all these other tasks that had to be done and had to be done, in fact, by myself initially. And just sort of, getting good at those, getting used to those while I continue to sort of help clients, with their challenges and issues that they were experiencing personally.
Yeah, that's one that I think echoes many people's experience when they do start up in business. We're all very good at being the technician, as Michael Gerber would talk about in the E-Myth, and those sorts of things. But the wider picture, it's always that struggle and that challenge. And I think it's an interesting one, especially for yourself, coming from the mindset side of things. Is how did your background and your training and what you're doing with clients actually help you sort of work through some of those challenges in growing and getting yourself up and running and those sorts of things?
Well, that's just a fantastic question, Craig, because, one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about actually is walking the talk. So what I really don't like is, telling my clients to do certain things, but not actually doing them myself. There's just a total lack of congruency there and just, sincerity as well. And so what I was doing a lot of the time was then utilizing my NLP skills, particularly, on helping me, overcome these challenges that I was experiencing. Things like, controlling my state, creating new habits, for example, dealing with stress and anxiety as well, motivation, focus, all these sort of things, which are all heavily mindset related, but of course are so crucial and paramount to running a successful business.
Yeah, awesome. There's nothing better. I love it hearing somebody say, you've got to walk the walk, and everything that you talk about, you practice what you preach. I know in my world, it's one of these ones, I help people implement profit first and profit strategies and the like. And sometimes it's quite easy to go, hey, go and do this, do that. And then you go, hang on a second, I've got to be doing that myself, and I've got to do that. And again, it obviously helps you be able to relate to your clients a whole lot better as well. But also they can see that because they know what you talk about is, hey, this is somebody that's actually been there and done that themselves.
And you can relate to them empathetically more as well, Craig, because if you're doing something, some of the challenges and issues that you might experience. You can say, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? This is what I've done and it works so well. Give this a go. And it just comes through so well for the clients.
Yeah, so true. And you talk about some of these clients there. I'm interested. Obviously, you work with a number of business owners and the like as well. And you touch upon a couple of little scenarios there. But I'd like to dig a bit deeper on that. What are some of the challenges that you see quite regularly that are coming through from those business owner type of clients that you see, and also I guess what they present with, the questions, the challenges that they're having, and I guess, and kind of that phase and the stages that you work through with clients, and I guess ultimately the outcomes that they actually get off the back of that.
Sure. Well, I suppose what we sort of begin with, the sort of starting point actually, is to say, okay, where do you want to be? What is your vision for your company, say, in the next 3 to 5 years? Because unless we've got that clear vision in place, we don't know where they're going. And so that's the very first step that we talk about, getting some clarity around that. Then once we've got that more or less in place, now what's going to be the plan to actually achieve that? So on an annual basis, quarterly basis, and so on. And then we talk about, well, how do you then allocate time in your week to work both on the business, not just in it? As I mentioned before, when you're doing all the accounting, you're doing the sales, you're doing the marketing, as well as, providing the products and services, that doesn't leave a lot of time, outside of that. So we talk about the really crucial importance of allocating time then to work on the business rather than just in it. And we sort of even talk about having 2 separate to-do lists in a sense, Craig. One is the one to do with your vision achievement. Number 2 is in fact the one to do with just the general running of the business on a day-to-day basis. So then this third step actually is then saying, okay, well, this is what you want to achieve. This is your plan. How can we now actually provide structure in your week, what we call block times, where you're going to be able to devote focused effort to achieving those particular tasks that lead you then to the progressive achievement of your visions. Once we've got that all worked out, then we say, okay, great. Now, how can you then be the most productive as you possibly can during these periods of time? So we spent a lot of time talking about distractions. As I think we all can appreciate in this information overloaded world we live in, there are so many, emails, social media, text messages constantly bombarding us. How can we set up an environment where we can be super focused and be very productive when we have these sort of what we call block times on working on these super critical strategic business tasks and processes? And so I use the analogy which I talk about actually in this program of ours. Just imagine this, Craig. Just imagine you play on a football team and you're the goalie and it's the grand final. No pressure, of course. And we're down to the last couple of minutes of the game and the scores are tied. no pressure, of course. And suddenly you get the ball. And now this is the last shot of the game to decide the outcome. As a goalie, how super focused would you be? Would you be thinking about what you had for breakfast that day, or the argument you're having with your spouse or kids or whatever? You would be so focused. That's all you would be thinking about. What we want our clients to develop, we sort of talk about being in the zone, is to developing strategies to help them achieve that state when they're moving into these periods of time. They're focusing on highly critical, important tasks for their business growth and achievement of their vision. So that's the other thing we didn't talk about. Then we go on to talk about really crucial topics like self-belief and limiting beliefs. How do you see yourself? Because let me again ask you this question, Craig. How many things have you not attempted because you lacked belief in your abilities, even if they were super critical to your business success, or could have really accelerated your progress in a particular direction, but you didn't even do them because you had doubts? And so one of the things that I've come to realize over and over, Craig, is that self-belief is actually so important for business owners to help them achieve what they want to achieve in their business. Because it's great having a vision, great having a plan, great having a structure, but if you have limiting beliefs about your ability to achieve that, well, you're sort of behind the 8 ball right from the very start. So we do a lot of work on self-belief, improving that. We also do work on controlling your state. It's so important, your state, to how you your productivity levels during the day in your business. Give me an example here. I hope you don't mind asking you all these questions. Here's an example, Craig. Let's just say, for example, you're having an absolutely awesome day. Everything's going so well. All the problems are being solved, and you're really happy and fulfilled about the day for whatever reason. And then suddenly a challenge comes up at some point later on in the day. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel about your ability to be able to get in there and just get it done and conquer it?
Yeah, it can be challenging at times. It depends on where your mindset is, what the challenges are, and all those other things you've just run through, all the distractions and things that are going on, that then impacts about how quickly I get back on track and recover and those sorts of things, and be able to get back into that flow state that you want to be in.
But if you're in a positive, powerful, happy state, you probably find it relatively easier to deal with that challenge compared to if the following happened. You're having a really bad day. Everything's going wrong. The clients are upset, you're having problems with your staff, and you're just in a really negative state. And then you come across a challenge. What do you think is your ability to be able to deal with that effectively?
Yeah, it's a much bigger struggle, isn't it? It's you're not coming from a good mindset space, and you're a little bit you're all over the shop, and therefore that period that as I said before, it's like, oh, you're off track and all those sorts of things, but you can get there. Then you potentially give up, or you're like, oh, you throw your hands up in the air, you go into that overwhelmed state that people often get to. And yeah, it's something that quite easily happens. We've all experienced it. I know I have. Definitely.
So the interesting thing is that your state actually is crucial thereby as to how you approach challenges, how you deal with issues that come up during the day. Let me ask you now another question, Craig. Let's just say you're having a really bad day, one we just talked about, for example, and things aren't going well, there's challenges and issues. And then suddenly you get a phone call, and it's from your best friend. You haven't spoken to this person for 5 years. They say, Craig, I'm in town tonight, one night only. I'd love to catch up, just talk about old times, and just, let's have some fun. How would your state change instantly?
Yeah, exactly that. It would be instant.
So the interesting thing here is we know from that example, Craig, it's possible to change your state like that. And that was just a random event. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Can you control that? can you change your state with volition, right? And the answer is yes, definitely. There's lots of tools available to help you do that. In fact, we talk a little bit about things like physiology, music, NLP techniques to help people with that. So the important thing I'm sort of leading to here, Craig, is the ability to be able to control your strategy is so important to your effectiveness during the day in your business. So we cover this off also in quite a bit of detail. But talking about physiology just for a sec, this is a really good example of how you might control your state. Have you done actually any work with Tony Robbins in the past?
Not any specific work myself, no.
Okay. He's hugely focusing on your state. This is actually one of the key things he talks about. Control your state, control your outcomes and so on and so on. Now, looking at physiology, which is a great way of controlling your state. If you see someone down the street, just observe their posture, how they're sort of carrying themselves, you can probably work out what their emotions are, generally speaking. So we can see that your emotions control your physiology, clearly. But it also works the other way around. Your physiology can also control your state. So if you're feeling quite down, you're depressed, for example, and you suddenly, hear your favorite song, you start dancing and carrying on and just jumping around and just being really physical, what happens to how you feel? Changes just like that. So there are a lot of techniques actually to help us change our state, and that's what we also tell our clients about. Stress and anxiety is also a really key one too, because how you're feeling in terms of stress and anxiety is actually also critical to your ability to be able to cope and again deal with challenges in your environment. Let me ask you another question, Craig. In what situation do you think you're more able to be creative, solve problems, and be productive? If you're stressed or if you're relaxed and calm?
Yeah, it's definitely when you're relaxed and calm.
So it's very important thereby moving forward to actually achieve or be at your best is to be able to also remain relaxed and calm. Yeah, that's some of the things we talk about.
Awesome. And I didn't jump in, apart from obviously the questions as you're firing them away in there, because you can see here, I've got a page full of notes here, and, there's so many great things there. And there's obviously a lot of alignment from the very beginning of the whole idea of having the vision, having the plan, and then having your two separate sort of components of that, of the activities and actions that need to happen for the longer term vision and the streams of that, with obviously then what you need to do day to day. These are all things that I know why we get along and we talk very similar language, because we're doing very similar things in our own space. I know we do the same in the financial space for businesses, but I love that sort of that bit towards the end where you're talking about, the self-belief and being able to get people to see that and see what they can do themselves, and also be aware that they actually can be in control of that as well. And that's pretty powerful for people to be able to see that, and then obviously have the benefits of it and be able to take action off the back of it as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people actually have this unfortunate belief that their environment controls them, when it's really the other way around. If you look at people, for example, who are inventors, for example, a great example actually is the guy who actually invented the biro pen. We actually have to create in our mind first what we want, for it to then manifest externally. And so, we have to flip that idea around and say, no, we create our environment, our lives, what we want to achieve internally first. Because without that, we then become a victim to our environment, and thereby we're a victim to what happens around us, our circumstances, which is not a good place to be.
Yeah, definitely. So true. So true. And that whole mindset and the vision, as you talked about, that whole seeing is believing, and the creation of it is paramount. And I could go down a big path on that in many ways myself as well. But very conscious of time, and you've shared so much great quality content in just this short conversation we've had here. A couple of last little questions around the idea, you know, what you do, that's life-changing kind of stuff. What's your comment and concept? My financial background means I kind of feel like I always have to ask this question about people getting a return on investment for what they do, whether it's, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to be a financial sense. I know that's how I talk about return on investment, but if I mention return on investment to yourself, you're about mindset for business growth and those sorts of things. What does that term sort of mean to you?
Well, if I look at sort of what some of our previous clients have been able to achieve through our group programs, there have been case people actually been able to increase their sales by up to 50%. Now, that's a pretty substantial return financially. Other cases, it's more a case of being more in control over their day-to-day schedules and eliminating these distractions, and also realizing how they lose time to others, you know, whether it's their family, whether it's their employees or their clients. You know, if you're at the beck and call of everyone all the time, how can you possibly get anything done? So, you know, how do you put a ROI on things like being more in control, being more productive, for example? How can you put an ROI on, I'm getting twice as much done now in half the amount of time? These are probably more intangibles in some respects. Putting an ROI on being more relaxed throughout the day, you know, being able to control yourself, to be more motivated. These are sort of, again, intangibles, but clearly they have a pretty substantial financial ROI as well.
Yeah, for sure. I love that answer, because the reality is our greatest asset in life, as it is in business, is time. And as you just touched upon there, you know, a return on investment is endless if you're in control of that, and you can, the world is your oyster, and you can manage that effectively, efficiently, and productively. Yeah, it's so powerful. So I love that answer. That's really, really good. So I guess the very last thing I'd love to say, there's probably a few tips that people have probably picked up, and like the notes that I've got down here on the page here, I know I've taken away some couple of key points, but if you were to sort of share that sort of one little thing that people could do tomorrow to sort of start to take one step at a time, as we always like to do things on an incremental basis, to set themselves on a path to having this great mindset and being in control of their state, what would it be?
Well, I suppose the key takeaways would be these sort of foundational principles that I might sort of leave your listeners with. Firstly, people like Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, and even Einstein actually all agree upon that success is actually based on 80% mindset and only 20% strategy. So the first thing is just to realize, you know, mindset is 4 times more important to your success than just strategy, which means people actually focus on almost entirely strategy, you know, in business, sales, marketing, you know, the accounting side and so on. But that actually is not, of course, the primary driver to your success. It's point number 1. Point number 2 is that for your business to grow, who needs to grow first? The owner has to grow first, clearly. And number 3 is your business ultimately becomes a reflection of the business owner, and including their limiting self-beliefs, you know, their poor self-image, and also any states, negative ones they may actually have throughout the day. So the first important thing is become crucially aware that your mindset is just so important. And then think about ways we talked about before. How can you start to control your state? How can you control your focus? How can you control your time and thereby your productivity? How can you also think about your motivation, for example? And so on and so on. And as you start to improve these bit by bit by bit, Craig, you sort of start this snowball effect, which will have huge impacts on for you, benefits for you moving down the track.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great little tidbits there for people to start being very aware. And, you know, the first part of anything is awareness and diagnosis. If people are conscious of those things, then, you know, they're in a position to then be consciously making decisions and moving forward. So Been awesome having the chat. Again, I'm going to have to debrief myself to take in a chunk of that myself, as I know everybody that's listening to this will do as well. But also, you know, if people want to learn more about what you do, Ian, and find you, what's the, you know, I know you've got some programs that you do and you roll out. Interested to know a short amount about them and also where people can find you.
We'll just go to our website, for example, Melbourne NLP Hypnosis Centre.com.au. Also on Facebook. I'm also can be contacted on LinkedIn as well. We actually run a quarterly program, Craig, called the Business Success Mindset Program. It runs over 4 weeks and it focuses on the issues, topics that we talked about before. You know, clarifying your vision, then your goals, creating the plan, creating the structure. How do you improve your focus? How do you get rid of the distractions? How do you really begin to realize the value of your time and how you're currently losing so much of it because of the way that you run your business? And then we talk about improving your state, reducing stress and anxiety, and also how to help yourself get into the zone where you're most productive and most focused whenever you need to be. So they can find out a bit more about that just by simply getting in touch with us via the website and so on. And so we run them every quarter. It's a group program that mix with, you know, like-minded business professionals that want to really achieve great things in their business. And we provide a lot of great support for them also between sessions as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Ian. And as always, we'll put those details in the show notes that will go with this interview as well. So that's a wrap for today. Again, thank you very much for joining us on the Profit Project today, Ian.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Awesome stuff. And so, as always, if you want to continue following more of these awesome interviews that we're having with these great experts that are, you know, leading their fields with content and information that they're sharing, remember, continue to follow us at theprofitproject.com.au. See you next time. Bye.
See you guys.